Buy on MTG. Construct your deck. Command your board. Conquer the table.
I'm Quimby, also known as Ryan, I guess.
You do have a first name.
I do have a first name.
This is me sending Rob the thing, so...
Okay. I'm playing Mira and Thrasios. It's an elf ball deck. The goal is to play elves, kill them to draw cards, and try to crater hoof them eventually.
In time.
Step 1, hoof. Step 2, ball.
Ball.
My name's Jason. I am running Raphael, Fiendish Savior. I'm just running some devils and trying to devil everybody out.
It's because you're a good-looking devil, right?
I'm James. I'm running the first
Fiendish
sliver,
dragon.
and all I want to do is play slivers to play more slivers.
No food chain.
No food chain.
Just
No.
slivers.
This is straight slivers, brothers.
So
Brothers!
That makes us on the food chain, then.
I'm playing Nelly Borka, the stop hitting yourself and you did this to yourself, and blame game, very upgraded precon. But yeah,
Alright.
it does that.
Should we get going, then?
Quimby opens up with a Gilt-Leaf Palace, revealing a Finehorn Elves, and then tapping said Gilt-Leaf Palace to cast said Finehorn Elves. Jason plays a tapped Malakir Mire. James plays a tapped World Tree. Rob starts out with a Snarl, revealing a plane, so it comes into play untapped, tapping the Snarl for an Esper Sentinel, the Rhystic Buddy. Ryan plays a tapped Zaggoth Triome, then taps for 2 to play his commander, Myra Thorn of the Glade. Jason plays a Phyrexian Tower and taps for 2 for an Arcane Signet. Quimby was nice enough to remind Rob about his Esper Sentinel trigger, so he asked Jason did he want to pay the 1, and he can't, so he draws a card. James plays Spara's Headquarters and passes the turn. Rob plays a Mountain, taps for 2, plays an Arcane Signet, asks a dumb question, and then passes the turn. Quimby shocks in an Overgrown Tomb and taps for 3, playing an Edric, Spymaster of Trest. He then moves to combat, swinging Mira at Rob and Finehorn at Jason, and drawing 2 cards. Jason plays a Mountain for turn, taps for 2, playing a Hobble Fiend. Activates Phyrexian Tower, sacrificing the Hobble Fiend for 2 black, adding a 3rd black with the Arcane Signet for a Necropotence. This triggers Esper Sentinel. Jason can't pay, Rob draws. Jason pays 3 life to Necropotence, exiles 3 cards, moves to end step, puts them into his hand. James plays a Cavernous Souls, naming Slivers for turn, moves to his end step. Rob pays 1 to Ash Barrens to cycle it, picks up a Plains. On Rob's turn, he plays the Plains, moves to combat, swings Esper Sentinel at James to trigger Edric, Spymaster of Trest, to draw a card. He then taps for 2 mana to play a Baked Potato, and then taps 3 mana to play a Screaming Nemesis. Passing the turn to Quimby, he untaps, draws for turn, plays a Scalding Tarn. He's going to fetch and shock. He then taps for 4 and plays a Beast Whisperer. The card draw engine is officially online. Taps Finehorn for a green, playing a Wirewood Symbiote, drawing off of Beast Whisperer. He moves to combat, swinging Edric at Jason, Myra at James, triggering Edric twice and drawing 2. Quimby's drawn so many cards he has to discard to hand size. Passes turn to Jason. Jason plays a Haunted Ridge, comes into play untapped. Jason pays 2 and casts Goblin Bombardment, triggering Esper Sentinel. He elects to not pay, Rob draws. Then Jason pays 3 for a Zerzoth Chaos Rider. Jason pays 3 to Necropotence, moves to his end steps, puts them into his hand, passes the turn to James. James plays a Bayou for turn, taps for 3, plays a Chromatic Lantern. Rob misses his Esper Sentinel trigger, and James passes the turn to him. Rob untaps and draws, plays a Plains for turn, taps 2 Mana Rocks for a Mana Rock, and then taps 4 for Nelly Borka. Rob moves to combat, sends the Screaming Nemesis at Jason and the Esper Sentinel at James, triggering Edric to draw 2. Rob moves to clean up, remembers he has Thought Vessel, so he passes the turn to Quimby. Quimby untaps, draws for turn. He pays 3, playing Shaman of the Pack, draining Rob for 5, drawing off of Beast Whisperer, then activating Wirewood Symbiote to untap Finehorn Elves and return Shaman of the Pack to his hand. Plays a Windswept Heath, cracks it for a forest. Taps for 2, playing Agatha's Soul Cauldron, triggering Esper Sentinel, and Quimby pays his taxes like a model citizen. Activates the Cauldron, eating Jason's Hobble Fiend, putting a +1 counter on Beast Whisperer. Moves to combat, swings the Beast Whisperer at James for 3, draws off of Edric. Moves to cleanup, discarding Flooded Strand, and passes the turn to Jason. Jason skips his draw due to Necropotence, moves to main phase, plays an Arid Mesa. Cracks the Arid Mesa and searches for a Blood Crypt. While he's searching, Rob takes a trip down memory lane talking about a CCG from the 90s, Guardians. Pretty amazing artwork. He then taps for 5 and casts Raphael, Fiendish Savior. Jason moves to combat and swings Zerzoth at James, triggering Zerzoth, where they both draw a card and then discard a card at random. Jason makes a Devil due to James drawing not on his turn. Jason then draws from Edric after combat damage. Additionally, he gains 3 life from lifelink. Rob misses his Nelly Borka trigger. Jason sacrifices his Devil token to Goblin Bombardment, targeting Esper Sentinel with 1 damage, and the Devil token damage towards Wirewood Symbiote. In response, Ryan returns Myra to his hand, untapping Finehorn Elves. Jason gains a life because the Devil token had lifelink from Raphael. Passing the turn to James, James untap upkeep, draws for turn, plays an unclaimed territory, naming Slivers. James then taps for 5 and casts the first Sliver for the first time. Triggering Cascade, James reveals from the top and reveals a Virulent Sliver, giving all Slivers Poisonous 1. James pays 1 for Sidewinder Sliver, revealing off the top, reveals Ancestral Visions, drawing 3 cards. Moves to clean up and discards to hand size, passing the turn to Rob. Casting Jessica's Will, targeting Quimby. In response, Quimby snaps Rob's commander back to his hand, so Rob elects to just take the 7 red mana. Using 3 of the red and adding 1 white, Rob recasts Nelly Borka. Spending 3 more and enchanting James' first sliver with Vow of Lightning. Plays a Castle Ardenvale as a land for turn. Spends the last of the Jessica's Will mana with 3 more, casting a Frontier Warmonger, giving all creatures attacking opponents of mine Manache. Moves to combat, swings Screaming Nemesis at Quimby for returning to favor for bouncing his commander. Quimby takes a 3, and then Rob moves to cleanup and passes the turn. Quimby untaps and plays a Verdant Catacomb for turn, cracks a Verdant Catacomb. Shocks in a Breeding Pool. Paying 2 for Coiling Oracle, off the top revealing Mystic Remora. Immediately pays 1 to play the fish. Quimby remembers his Beast Whisperer trigger, so draws from the Coiling Oracle. Quimby sees no clear attack, so he passes the turn to Jason. Jason untap upkeep, draws for turn, plays an unclaimed territory, naming Devils. Paying 3, Jason summons Mahadi Emporium Master. Pays 1 and a red for a Tybalt's Razor. Jason moves to combat, swinging Zerzoth at James and Raphael at Rob, triggering Zerzoth twice. Jason draws 2 cards, and James and Rob each draw 1 card, triggering Zerzoth again, making 2 Devils. James takes a hit for 3, Rob takes 4 commander damage. Jason will gain 3 life due to lifelink. Jason will also draw 2 cards due to Adric. Rob finally remembers his Nelly Borka trigger, and Jason and Rob each draw a card. All of us forget that we are supposed to discard a card at random from the Zerzoth trigger. Jason sacrifices 2 Devils to Goblin Bombardment, targeting the Flanking Sliver and Coiling Oracle, each with the damage. In response, Quimby activates Agatha's Soul Cauldron, eating a creature from Jason's graveyard to put a +1 counter on Coiling Oracle. Jason gains 2 life from the Devils having lifelink. Jason moves to end step, makes 3 treasures off of the Mahadi trigger, and discards to hand size, passing the turn to James. James draws for turn, plays an Arid Mesa. Cracks for Volcanic Island. James pays 4 for a Bone Splitter Sliver. Triggering Cascade off of the first sliver, revealing a Spiteful Sliver. Triggering Cascade again, revealing a Darkheart Sliver. Cascading again into Striking Sliver. Rob pointed out that Jason's discarded cards should have gone to exile due to Necropotence. We did some board state maintenance and cleaned up the misplay. James' final cascade into a Wheel of Fate. Triggering the fish, drawing Quimby a card. We all discard, Jason's going to exile, and we draw a fresh 7. This triggers Zerzoth because 2 players drew and it wasn't their turn, so Jason makes 2 devils. James taps for 2, casting Menowith Sliver, triggering the first sliver with the Cascade trigger on the stack. Jason sacrifices 2 treasures and attempts to terminate the first sliver. James resolves the Cascade trigger, Robert guessing it's going to be a Soul Ring, and I'll be damned. Soul Ring triggering the fish, drawing Quimby a card. James casts Swiftfoot Boots as well as Lightning Greaves, just feeding the hell out of that fish. James can now move the Greaves around in conjunction with Menowith Sliver, making all of their mana abilities online. James then casts a Harmonic Sliver with the trigger targeting the fish. He then casts a Sentinel Sliver with the trigger targeting Agatha's Soul Cauldron. James feels like he did enough for the turn, so he passes to Rob. Rob plays a Mountain for turn and then taps 2 Mana Rocks for a Mana Rock. Yo dog, I heard you like rocks. Rob pays 5 and summons Slicer, everybody's favorite guy. Rob moves to combat, swings Nelly Borka at Quimby and Slicer at Jason, triggering Nelly Borka, so he puts the suspect counter on Harmonic Sliver. Jason blocks with Tybalt's Rager. Before damage, he sacrifices it to Goblin Bombardment to do 1 damage to Rob's face, and then the Death Trigger to do another damage to Rob's face, gaining Jason 1 life due to lifelink. They fiddle with the life counter for a moment, and then Rob passes the turn to Quimby. Quimby draws and plays Swamp for turn. Jason remembers Raphael trigger and makes a Devil token. Quimby plays Elves of Deep Shadow, triggering Beast Whisperer, drawing a card. Then plays Heritage Druid, draws a card. He then casts Elvish Visionary, drawing off of Elvish Visionary as well as Beast Whisperer. He then summons Kennen, drawing another card. Quimby then taps 3 elves with Heritage Druid's ability, summoning an Elvish Archdruid and drawing a card. Quimby had 1 mana floating from the Heritage Druid trigger because of Kennen, and with that he summons an Elvish Mystic, triggering and drawing another card. Then activates Heritage Druid again for 4 mana, and with 2 of it summons a Bloom Tender, drawing a card. Taps 3 more elves with the Heritage Druid ability. Taps 1 blue and neoforms the Edric, Spymaster of Trest. Finding Skyshroud Poacher. Feels like he's summoned enough and drawn enough, so he moves to combat and sends Slicer at James. James doesn't block, so he takes 6. Rob misses the Nelly Borka trigger, as per usual. Quimby discards to hand size and passes the turn to Jason. On Jason's upkeep, Rob passes Slicer to Jason. Jason draws for turn and plays Takenuma Abandoned Mire for his land for turn. Jason pays 3 for a Bastion of Remembrance, making a human token. He then pays 1, sacrificing the human for Village Rites, triggering Bastion of Remembrance, draining the table for 1, and drawing 2 cards. He then pays 3 for a Cursed Mirror, having it come in as a copy of Beast Whisperer. Bit of a misplay using Cursed Mirror for mana, but we catch it immediately and walk it back. Jason then moves to combat, sending Slicer at Ryan, Raphael at Rob, and Zerzoth at James. This triggers Zerzoth, so Rob and James will each draw a card, Jason will draw 2 cards and make 2 devils. This time we actually remember the Zerzoth discard clause. Quimby takes 6, Rob takes 4 commander damage, and James takes 3. Jason will then gain 3 due to the lifelink. Rob remembers the Nelly Borka trigger, and Jason and Rob each draw a card. Jason then sacks 4 devils to Goblin Bombardment to kill Slicer. Rob attempts to flash in a Mithril Cloak, rereading the card and realizing he doesn't currently control Slicer, so that's not a valid target. Jason targets Rob with the 4 damage from the Devil token Death triggers, and Jason then gains 4 life from their lifelink. This then triggers Bastion of Remembrance, draining the table for 4. Jason then pays 9 into Necropotence. Jason moves to end step. Mahadi triggers, gives him 6 treasures, does some hand sculpting, and exiles to hand size. Passing the turn to James. James untaps and draws for turn. Shocks in a Hollowed Fountain. James pays Wooburg +2 to resummon his commander, triggering Cascade, also triggering Tauren Mauler and putting a counter on it over on Jason's side. First Cascade reveals Sinuous Sliver, putting another counter on Tauren Mauler and triggering Cascade yet again. With the Cascade still on the stack and 2 harmonic triggers, James targets Goblin Bombardment and Bastion of Remembrance with the Harmonic Sliver triggers. Jason responds. Sacrifices a Devil token and a Mahade to put 2 Goblin Bombardment triggers facing the Harmonic Sliver. Quimby adjusts the life totals accordingly. With the Cascade and 2 Harmonics on the stack still, Jason sacrifices 2 treasures, casting Rakdos Charm, electing to have each creature do 1 damage to its controller. With that on the stack, James uses the Darkheart Sliver ability with the Verdant Sliver and sacrifices it to gain 3 life. In response to that, Jason sacrifices 3 treasures and attempts to bedevil the Darkheart Sliver. And in response to that, James sacrifices the Darkheart Sliver for 3 life. Clearing the stack now, James will gain 3, then Bedevil will fizzle, then James will gain 3, and then Rakdos Charms will do 1 damage to each player for each creature they control. Quimby loses 10, Rob loses 3, James loses 7, Jason loses 3, but 2 of his creatures have lifelink, so he gains 2. Now with the stack cleared down to 2 Harmonic Sliver triggers and the Cascade, Jason sacrifices 3 more creatures to Goblin Bombardment. Jason points the 3 damage from Bombardment to James's face, and then Bastion of Remembrance drains the table for 3, knocking Quimby out. For the entirety of that stack, I misspoke and there was no Cascade, yet I do not want to re-record that entire part. James starts doing combat math, and Jason starts politicking. Quimby makes the observation that we play together way too much as the politicking and the shit-talking commences. James sends 23 combat damage at Jason and 3 creatures at Rob. In response, Rob taps 3, flashes in a Mithril Cloak, attaching it to his commander. After assigning first strike damage, Jason will take 23 damage, Warmonger is going to die, Neliborka is indestructible, and Screaming Nemesis takes 5 and will direct it towards James's face, killing James. The general consensus is everyone forgot about Screaming Nemesis' ability, passing the turn to Rob. Untap, upkeep, draw for turn. Rob plays War Room for turn, then taps for 3, casting Savine's Reclamation, bringing back Screaming Nemesis. Move to combat, swing Neliborka at Jason for 2 commander damage. Passing the turn to Jason. Jason untaps, doesn't draw due to Necropotence. Jason taps for 3, summons a Mayhem Devil. Jason taps for 5, casts a Season of Loss. With the 5 paw prints, he elects to have each player sacrifice a creature twice, and then each opponent loses X life, where X is the number of creature cards in your graveyard. Rob does some math because he has Reverberate and seeing if he can kill Jason with it, but he does not have nearly enough creatures in the graveyard. Rob then gets even sadder because it is loss of life, and his Selfless Squire cannot prevent that. Rob pays 2 life and activates War Room, digging for an answer. Finds a Chaos Warp, and although that is an answer, it's not an answer to this question. Damage resolves, knocking Rob out of the game, making Jason the winner. Hello out there. Definitely a fun and interactive game. There were certain aspects that had to get sped up quite a bit to correlate with the regular commentary. That being said, it was the first time the 3 of us had played with Quimby before in that environment. Although we've all known one another and we're all in the same local community, we haven't had a game with the 4 of us before. So it was a little bit of learning hurdles, and you know how Commander is. You got to get to know the people and their play styles, and that's really what makes the game as fun as it does. Overall, had a blast playing it. Everybody, just a lot of dumb jokes, and it seemed like everybody had a really good time, and it was just a blast. I wanted to say welcome to Quimby, and although Seth has been out of the loop for the last 2 weeks, he's planning on being back next week, and we're going to start up the Commander series with the precons from Duskmourn. Quimby's going to be in the shoot anytime that we have a slot or a vacant, whether it be Jason or Seth or James. It'd be really hard if it was me, being that this is at my house. A ton of fun, and look forward to finishing this edit and getting it out into the wide world of web, and I hope you all enjoy. Have a great day. Good luck and have fun out there.
Thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, and comment down below.